Support for the CivicSciTV network comes from listeners and viewers like you, and organizations such as the Rita Allen Foundation, which invests in transformative ideas in their earliest stages to leverage their growth and promote breakthrough solutions to significant problems. Go to ritaallen.org to learn more.
Mapping the global landscape of civic science by dissecting new insights from researchers, practitioners, and leaders in academia, government, for-profit, and nonprofit organizations. This is Questions of the Day with Fanuel Muindi.
Well, welcome back to Questions of the Day. I'm your host, Fanuel Muindi. I'm very excited today to be joined by Lisa Scheifele. She's the executive director and board member of the Baltimore Underground Science Space, or in short, BUGSS, and is also the Department of Biology chair at Loyola University. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's great to be with you today.
Now, I've been having a lot of fun mapping this landscape of the community biology labs, which started with GenSpace when I visited GenSpace in New York and had a really wonderful time learning about the work that they're doing there. So we're going to continue that today. And we're going to have Lisa tell us a little bit more about BUGSS. So Lisa, my first question to you is, can you tell us more about BUGSS, especially in those earliest days? What in the community did you see or hear that prompted you and your colleagues to say, let's create BUGSS?
Yeah. So, I've been involved with BUGSS from the beginning, but I haven't had as big a role as I do now. So really, it got prompted with iGEM. I don't know if you know that. It's a international bioengineering competition in synthetic biology. It's really mostly a college level program. And one of my colleagues, Tom Burkett, who works at the local community college, people were really interested and engaged in this program and wanted to participate. And so they were kind of reaching out to him and saying, hey, can we make a team? Can we do this? Is there a way to be involved? And unfortunately, because they didn't have any kind of formal affiliation with a college or university, there was no real way for them to participate. And so we wound up kind of putting together a bit of a hybrid team, some Loyola, some community college, some other local universities. But it was kind of this hybrid, and we kept getting interest from other people. And it really kind of planted the seed of, is there a need? Is there an interest? People were really excited about like the new technologies and CRISPR and what can it do? And can we try it out? And can we learn more? And there just wasn't a place for them to find that or to get engaged. And so really inspired by places like GenSpace, Tom and two other founders just rented this office suite in an old factory and put in some lab benches and got some old equipment off of eBay and said, if we build it, will people come and will they be interested in using the space and doing research and learning things? And somehow 12 years later, we're still here. So I guess there was enough interest and demand from the community.
Yeah, 12 years later. I mean, that is just impressive. So there's a quote actually from a video that I found, and I was listening to it earlier today. And so this is what you said. This is a really great comment. You said science should be a lifelong endeavor, which is best done in community, with the community, in service of the community, end quote. And so just going back to my earlier question about what you were seeing in the, from the community and you're learning from them, what kind of led you guys, right? What were you hearing more from them? And then who are these people that are coming to the community biology lab?
Yeah, I think what we were really hearing was kind of excitement and interest. And, I talk a lot about the people smarter than I, Steve Jobs and people like that have talked about how the 21st century is going to be the century of biology and biology technology. And I think we've really switched from, 19th, 20th century, we're just discovering what's there, right? We're trying to understand what already exists. In the 21st century, we're making new stuff. We can really actually get to the point where we can start changing things, making new therapies, making new devices, making new organisms. And that's really interesting and exciting to people. And I can't overstate how big CRISPR was in just capturing the public imagination. And so I think it's kind of all of that interest that people are like, what's really going on? And are things changing that dramatically? And how is it going to look different? And what can we do? And so we get people really from all walks of life, lots of professionals, but very often they're engineers or software people or accountants, librarians. We get a lot of college and even high school students who just aren't getting enough in their current classes and they really want to go deeper. But it's a very broad group. We also have always had interest from artists, which is really interesting to us because they're the ones who really can kind of envision, right? What could be different and how could it look? And so that's a really exciting partnership for us to have always.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different way, right? You have all these diverse set of people that are coming together. You have artists, right? You have professional scientists, and also those who are entrepreneurs, right? That are probably taking advantage of the lab space. So, what the main question, I guess, what are people working on? I guess what is popular?
Yeah. So, we have a wide variety. We kind of have two levels. We have individual member projects where people kind of have their own idea. They come in and they want to create something, and it can be anything from a cancer therapeutic. We've got people doing diagnostics for viral diseases. Of course, they can't always bring these to completion in our space. Often they're just doing the earliest work. And then we also have what we call group projects. And our group projects, there's three major ones. The first is Open Insulin, and that's a collaboration with the Open Insulin Foundation. And the goal of that project is to actually manufacture insulin because most people probably know that the cost of insulin has gone up tremendously. It's become unaffordable. And there's really no good reason for it. This is a drug that we've been able to mass produce using microorganisms since the 80s. The technology has changed. The drugs are better, but not enough to justify the fact that it's unaffordable for patients who need it. And so the Open Insulin Foundation is trying to manufacture insulin at community-based scales. Eventually, of course, having the insulin FDA approved before we give it to patients. Safety is always first. But that's one of our projects that captures a lot of interest. So kind of a more medical project. We have an environmental project. We call it Barcoding the Harbor. And it's trying to understand everything that lives in Baltimore's inner harbor. And, we know the big things, the oysters, the crabs, but we don't really understand the base of the food chain, all those smaller things, and how dynamic and how vibrant it is. And I've actually been surprised that we see a lot of dramatic change in the base of the food chain, more than we might expect. And the third project we call chromoproteins. It's about engineering new colors and new pigments into microorganisms, largely to use it for artwork and to create living works of art. And so those are kind of our three areas. And those are the ones that we really invite people. If people come in and they're like, I don't know anything, I haven't taken science since, high school biology, but I'm interested, right? We tell them to kind of join those projects. And it's a great way to kind of get up to speed and to join what are actually pretty sophisticated endeavors. Most of them, we have professional scientists as partners on them. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what have the community members been telling you? You've been doing this for quite some time now. I'm curious, what are they saying after participating or
I think they're always a bit surprised by how a little bit slow and methodical science is. Sometimes we see science as like a string of headlines, as if like you're having a breakthrough every day, right? And so there's a lot of surprise at just the nature of science, how it works and how it goes. And that I would say 90% of what you do in science is failure. If you knew it and it was successful, it wouldn't be science. It would just be like cooking. I know what this is. I know it should work. Anytime you're doing something unknown, there's going to be a high risk of failure. And so I think that's the thing that people always tell me is like, I didn't think science was like this. I didn't really understand how it is or what it was like.
Yeah.
But I think
And,
also,
and sticking with the
yeah.
and just sticking with the community members, I'm curious, are you quantifying these insights? I'm curious, or what metric are you trying to capture from those who are participating, especially from the community?
Yeah, I wish we were better at kind of capturing data. We do it kind of periodically and sporadically. We assess kind of when people take courses with us. We
Right.
gauge kind of, how successful, how they found the courses, whether we made it, because we're doing stuff that's pretty high tech, we're trying to make sure that it's relatable to people. So we're always following, the number of paying members we have, the number of enrollments that we have. Those are our biggest ways of quantifying. Kind of as a volunteer organization, we're not always as good about, we're so excited to be at the lab bench. We're not always so excited to kind of track those things in ways that aren't just anecdotal.
Don't go away. The conversation continues after this special highlight.
Hello, I am here to encourage students to apply to the microgrant program of Research America. This program connects you to a plethora of resources that allow you to conduct civic engagement projects within your university campuses and beyond, connecting to policymakers and the community in finding sustainable and transformative solutions. But it also allows you to connect to other students who, like you, want to exert social change in their communities.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie. I am here with Science Policy Network Detroit. We are homed in Detroit, Michigan, center of Detroit, and affiliated with Wayne State University. And the premise of our activity was to invite local scholars, students that are undergoing research at our university, graduate students, faculty, to come and participate in a science fair. But as I mentioned, this was a science fair with a twist. So the faculty, the researchers, the graduate students were all kind of charged to see whether or not they could demonstrate their science to a group of local high school students in a fun, interactive, and engaging way. So we invited people from different disciplines to demonstrate their science, and we also invited a nearby local high school, a set of STEM interested students to Wayne State's campus, where they could actively go around and engage in this science fair with a twist. And the twist was that they themselves were actually serving as the judges for the science fair.
Yeah. And what about the professional scientists? Those who are coming to this community about what are they telling you? What have you heard from them over the years?
I think what's really fun is, I've always said the big thing about how we run BUGSS is it's very bottom up. So we have tried, I told you we have 3 member projects. We've tried other ones in the past and they just don't take, people are just not as interested. They don't have as much persistence. And so we really follow what the community's interests are. We try things, and if people show up, then we start doing it. And if people keep showing up, we keep doing it. And that's kind of a different way for professional scientists. But it also means that where those projects go really depends on the expertise of who we bring in. So sometimes we have a tendency to see people as, oh, they're not professional scientists, but they bring in a ton of other experiences and other skills that can be just as interesting and valuable. So, artists are going to see things in a very different way. When we talk about the pigments and making pigments, which ones, whether we look at stability over time, and different things are important to them. For the Barcoding the Harbor project, we went a lot deeper, not just into the biology, but in kind of making correlations between the environmental data. There's tons of sensors taking, pH and salinity and all of those values. There's rich data sets. And because we had people who weren't biologists, but they were data people, they were data scientists, they were like, ooh, we want to look at that. We want to make those connections for you. And so sometimes for the scientists, you get to go in ways that you wouldn't normally, because those people aren't part of your research group, or those skills aren't part of your research group. So it can be really exciting to be pulled in kind of different and interesting new directions, because you're working with people who are kind of outside your normal circle. And that's kind
different
of the way
ways
I
of.
see it. We're doing
It's
real
just
science, but I always say we're not trying to compete with, like, in our neighborhood, it's Hopkins or the University of Maryland. I'm like, we're not doing that. We're not worried about publishing. We're not worried about kind of results. We're interested in kind of doing science differently in a way that's much more multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and meaningful to people.
Yeah. So you bring up Hopkins, and I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about the ecosystem that is around bugs and how you are connecting with, for example, maybe working with Hopkins or other organizations in the area.
Yeah, there's so much in this mid-Atlantic area between Hopkins, National Institutes of Health. There's so many private biotech places. We actually rely quite a bit on the expertise, not only of people who run their own research labs, but very often trainees. So graduate students and postdocs who know a lot, who are at the bench constantly, who are really excited, or sometimes who need to get reinvigorated about their science. And the best way to get kind of re-excited is to teach people and to see their enthusiasm for it. So a lot of the people who teach our courses, who mentor our projects, are working at some of these major research institutions. And it's just a really mutually beneficial relationship. We get a lot of expertise, and our members will constantly ask, oh, tell me about your research. What is it? And want to dig deeper. So we get their research expertise, but again, they get a much broader perspective. They also get skills in working with the public, in translating their science. When people ask them, what are you working on? You quickly have to learn which words are okay, which words are too much jargon, how to explain it. They get a lot of teaching and mentoring experience. So it's been great kind of having that reinforcing relationship.
Yeah. So clearly something that you're doing is working, right? You brought up iGEM earlier, right? And I hear that there was each year, right? There's a Baltimore BioCrew team, student team working at BUGSS, and I've heard that they have won gold or bronze medals, right? For these. So something you're doing is working, and you said that you need to do a better job of tracking, right? The impact, if you will, but. Can you give us a sense of what is it that you think you're doing, beyond providing accessibility, which is important? What is it that you think you're doing that is making a difference?
I think our approach has always been, iGEM is a great example, because every year we have a different project, and the students choose it entirely on their own. So this year we're manufacturing chocolate because the students started looking into and found that the current process of growing and harvesting cocoa is not only incredibly damaging to the environment, but there's all kinds of ethical child labor issues involved in it, and it's just not a great system. And so can we manufacture chocolate flavors and chocolate fragrances using microbes? And this is a huge new field of metabolic engineering. And so that's something that they pick completely on their own. We have a team of 6 or 7 mentors, and we're all kind of following the students and learning about it, because none of us know anything about chocolate or about many of these compounds or how to make them or how to detect them. It's kind of a wild ride, because as a scientist, you're here learning something completely new, but you know it and you're teaching the students, here's how you figure it out and here's how you do it. And for the students, I think it's so exciting that, normally our team is a high school team, actually, for iGEM. There's mostly college, but there's a high school division as well. Normally in high school, they're given these cookie cutter experiments, and they're very much just told what to do, follow these instructions. And here they get to like pick their project and design their project and take it and actually lead their mentors in terms of where we're going to go. And so I think it's so empowering. That to me is one of the big things we do, is kind of increasing people's ability to see themselves as scientists. You don't have to have a PhD to consider yourself a scientist. And so many of our iGEM students, we've had an iGEM team since 2015, you know, they go on to the best universities and they just kind of are the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of today, some of them by now. But they really kind of know, they're not afraid to lead and to develop something and to create something new. I think that's the biggest thing we do. And so it's so important and meaningful to them because it's theirs. And that's just been our approach kind of throughout what we do.
Yeah. Lisa, man, I wish I could just keep talking with you. As I mentioned offline earlier, this is just the opening, right? We're just setting the stage, right? And so I wanted to ask you
anytime, and you know that goes for anybody who's listening. We're kind of an open space. We're always happy to have people come and see in action what we do.
I will take you up on that offer. So I actually ended up going to New York. I'm based in Providence, and to visit GenSpace, for example. It took that effort. Yep. So I will take you up on that offer. Let's talk about a little bit about your wish list. So BUGSS has been around for a while. There clearly are challenges, of course, to doing this work. Could you tell us what's the biggest challenge?
It's people. We are still an all-volunteer organization. We have part-time staff. But the hardest thing is, you know, we have a lot of people who come in who are interested, who want to do science. And again, because we have this bottom-up approach where we're kind of letting the participants drive things, it means it's really intensive in terms of the number of trained scientists that we have to mentor, to educate, to teach. And a lot of those, again, there's benefits to working with people who are trainees, graduate students, and postdocs. They bring a tremendous amount of energy, but they're not necessarily in Baltimore for a decade. So we have kind of a bit of a constant turnover of people. It's exciting, it's fun, but our biggest issue and need is kind of we're always looking for people to help and to mentor for short-term, for long-term. That's a lot of what I do, is just connecting who are the people who want to do a project or who are in iGEM, and who are the people who can bring the expertise or teach the class or something like that.
Now let's imagine you just got like $100,000 unrestricted grant, Lisa. Okay? Unrestricted. You know that magical thing, unrestricted. Where would you deploy it first?
Probably an education director or a lab manager member. We've actually been talking about this because I feel like at BUGSS we are at a bit of a transition. Some places like GenSpace have managed to be staffed, and they do have paying staff. We're kind of at that transition. And so we do have kind of these two arms, the research arm where we have members and they need support. You know, we run the lab, we supply the lab, we order things for the lab, and then we have the education where we teach, and we teach all the way from adults to elementary school, mostly adults in high school. We like the cutting edge stuff, but there's huge demand from the younger ones as well. So really having staff who can kind of oversee and develop those programs. We don't use a lot of canned curriculum because, again, we want it to be fresh and exciting and interesting. So we develop a lot of curriculum ourselves. So it's really kind of having those key education and research leaders who can provide that consistency and work with people. Yeah.
And you mentioned people, right? At the end of the day, people are a resource and need funding to pay for their time, right? To make sure they're they're sustainable. And you're right, GenSpace. I had the pleasure of meeting their paid staff members who took me around and told me about the programming that they're doing there, and the ecosystem in New York as well. That's why I asked you about the ecosystem where you are based, because that can make a huge difference, right? To the way you're structured. Yeah. So where's the future here for BUGSS? What do you wish to see, and or better yet, what are you guys talking about? You mentioned you're trying to bring people, but
Yeah.
tell us more a little bit.
You know, I think we've had a couple full circle moments where we've had students who are, for example, part of the iGEM team who went on to did college and did whatever, and then come back kind of more in a mentorship role. And that's really where I would love to kind of see things, that we have kind of these, we're really starting to see these longer relationships where people kind of, we've had kids who have been with us from 8th grade to 12th grade, and we can see them grow and we can see them develop. And so I think kind of bringing those people back, seeing them in a new role, seeing them as mentors, that's always been kind of big and huge for us. In terms of where we want to go as an organization, big picture, I always come back to, that's really part of that's based on the community. We've changed. We're a very different organization now than we were in 2012. We do a lot more high school and kids programming, but we also do a lot more for entrepreneurs and having that entrepreneurial wing. And so I think a lot of where we go is really going to be looking at the demand. Right now in Baltimore City, it's very hard to get lab space. And so we've really tried to emphasize that for early stage companies, we are an actually pretty sophisticated lab space for places. So we're here to kind of support the community to see where those holes, where those opportunities are. We absolutely thrive on partnerships. Other organizations coming to us and saying, we have interns who need a mentored experience, or we have entrepreneurs who need a lab space. And so we're always kind of looking out and seeing where those are. We're also trying to kind of connect more at a national level with the other spaces. I think one of the things about being so rooted in our own communities is that we sometimes are very, in our case, Baltimore centric, which is awesome. Baltimore is an awesome place, and I love that we're so grounded and connected to it. But there are also these other groups doing similar things, right? And so finding that balance of how we can have more power and strength together to teach people about this movement, that it's not scary, it's pretty stable at this point. It's kind of a new part of the ecosystem for science communication, for science teaching, for education. I think collectively we could have a lot of impact and power for people.
Yeah. And we were just speaking with LinLab, and this is the same point that they made about connectivity, that you wish to still connect more broader. I understand there was a national meeting of some kind of community biology labs that maybe should come back or something potentially.
Yeah, there's a global community bio summit that kind of, again, it just didn't have the volunteer power to continue, but it was a great resource to keep us all connected.
Yeah, so funders watching is probably, that's something that, how do we keep that kind of ecosystem going? And you mentioned that you see the community biology being a critical component of this ecosystem, right? I use the term civic science more broadly, right? I think it's interesting to see. This is why I found myself glued to community bio labs, and GenSpace are to blame for this space. And other communities, right? Also, the BioBUGSS, you might have heard of BioBUGSS up in New York. I think it's just interesting to understand this ecosystem and understand what you guys are learning from doing this work, right? The challenges that are there and so forth. Lisa, this was a fantastic conversation. In your 2016 paper with Thomas Burkett, he's the co-founder, right? You do, and you've talked about this, that the idea of preserving the bottom up, right? The bottom up membership, right? That you have this balance between professional scientists and those from the community. I think that's very interesting to just keep a tab on that. And so we're going to have you back for sure, and others from your organization to come back and tell us more for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it.